Almost 40 years later, on the very day that her body is found, an arrest is made. I've got goosebumps.
How would you feel if you found out that your neighbor, your friend, or your colleague was actually a wanted murderer who had been on the run for nearly 40 years? How would you react if you learned that the person you knew by one name was actually someone else with a different name, a different past, and a different identity?
The victim was last seen by a family member in the company of Santini.
He would come over and visit and say, "Oh, what are you doing? What are you building for my neighbor?" And very cordial guy, very nice guy.
This is the story of Donald Santini, one of the longest running fugitive hunts in American history. It is the story of a cold case murder, a nationwide manhunt, and a shocking twist. It's a story of how one man's lies caught up with him after decades of hiding. It's a story of how one woman's death was avenged after years of waiting.
Okay, listen, guy is rad. He's rad.
Why doesn't anybody contact the president? Why is he letting this happen to us?
The force is with more than just the characters in this latest edition of Star Wars. It will be also felt in your wallets, where tickets are going for $4.50 to $5. But then no one seems to mind anyway. Lorraine Woodward, Channel 7 News.
Cynthia Wood was a 33-year-old mother of two who was going through a divorce at the time in 1984. She lived in Hillsborough County, Florida, and worked as a waitress at a local restaurant.
She was kind of sort of a hippie woman. She would have went to the ends of the earth for all of us. Even though I wasn't cursed by blood, but just growing up with and around her, we were a family.
On June 6, 1984, she went out with a man named Charles Michael Stevens, whom she had met at the restaurant. They had dinner at a local steakhouse and then went to a bar, and they were seen leaving the bar around midnight. However, this would be the last time anyone saw Cynthia or Charles.
The victim was last seen by a family member in the company of Santini.
I have 3 young daughters of my own, and I'm really upset about it.
The next day, Cynthia's body was found in a canal near Tampa by 2 fishermen. She had been strangled with a rope and her hands were tied behind her back. Her purse and car were missing, and the police quickly identified Charles Michael Stevens as the prime suspect for her murder. He was the last person seen with her alive, and his fingerprints were all over her body. But there was a problem. Charles Michael Stevens wasn't really a person. He was actually Donald Santini, a 28-year-old fugitive from Texas who had a long criminal history. He had served time in prison for forcing himself on a woman while stationed in Germany as a soldier. He had also been charged with aggravated robbery in connection with a convenience store robbery in Texas in 1983. He had used several fake names and identities to avoid arrest and prosecution. Santini fled Hillsborough County immediately after killing Cynthia. He left behind his car, which contained his real driver's license and other documents that revealed his true identity. The police issued a warrant for his arrest and launched a nationwide manhunt for him.
When he talked about violence and crime, he got an actual happy feeling out of it. He pointed out where he had done it, exactly how he had done it and such, and he was just glowing about it, you know.
Santini proved to be very elusive and cunning. He changed his appearance, used different aliases, and moved from state to state and even country to country. He lived in Texas, California, even Thailand, and possibly other places. He worked in various jobs, such as managing an apartment complex, owning a Thai restaurant, and volunteering with the Rotary Club.
Manager Wells Simmons says he saw the family loading up the trailer. He was worried that some of the tires looked bald and at least one was a spare.
One of the children did make a comment before they left that they moved 10 times in the last year. She was tired of it.
He would also eventually get married and have children. Throughout the years, he was featured on a television show called America's Most Wanted 3 times, in 1990, 2005, and 2013.
Good evening from Houston for Sunday, January 14th. I'm John Wall.
But none of the tips or leads resulted in his capture. He always managed to stay one step ahead of the law. He also avoided using any digital or electronic devices that could trace him or expose him. He was careful not to draw attention to himself or arouse suspicion from anyone he met or interacted with. He blended in with his surroundings and pretended to be a normal citizen. In 2018, Santini settled in Campo, California, a small town near the Mexican border. He used the name of Wellman Simmons and became the president of the local water board. He appeared regularly at public meetings and was well liked by his neighbors and colleagues.
I am Wellman, I'm the president of the board now. Okay, the plan has been in place for 2 years. So that's what's going to happen. There'll be 5 board members.
Within 90 days.
Within 90 days, we'll have an election.
But his past finally caught up with him in June 2021, when US Marshals received a tip from the Florida and Caribbean Regional Fugitive Task Force that Santini was living in Campo under an alias. They conducted surveillance on him and confirmed his identity through fingerprints and photos. They arrested him on June 11th at his home without incident. Santini was extradited to Florida on June 28th and charged with first-degree murder of Cynthia Wood.
He was a pillar of his community, an upstanding citizen, served as the head of the local water board.
For almost 4 decades, the Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office has been searching for Donald Michael Santini.
The Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office said their detectives were traveling to San Diego County today to interview Santini, who just turned 65, before he comes back to Tampa. In Tampa, Trevor Sahaki, 8 on your side.
He appeared in court on July 6th and was denied bond by Judge Catherine Catlin.
He is not entitled to any bond based on what came out of his own mouth. You have from his very own mouth that he knows he's been on the lam for 39 years and that he purposely has been using fake IDs so that he could avoid law enforcement.
Being on the run, my words, for almost 40 years is a consciousness of guilt. You knew you were running from something. You're the definition of flight risk. There is nothing I can do to preserve the safety of this community if I were to let you go.
Santini faces life in prison or the death penalty if convicted of killing Cynthia Wood. This has been one of the most remarkable examples of how justice can be delayed but not denied. This case shows how persistence, collaboration, and technology can help solve a cold case and bring closure to the victims' families.
But if law enforcement is assiduous enough, persistent enough, they'll catch the guy. Look at this one.
So what do you think of this case? And how do you feel about Santini's arrest after so long? And what do you think should happen to him now? Until then, stay safe.